Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais, and my co-host, Andrew Bobo, is on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Yeah, welcome back to Matter of Facts. Phil and Andrew are back behind the mic. Thank God we managed to make our schedules line up. Raggle Fraggle saying, hey guys, hello to you, sir. Or ma'am, I have no freaking clue. That's the wonders of the internet. Y'all are all anonymous. Y'all could all be AI chatbots as far as I know. But before we get to two topics actually, we first need to talk about Prepper Camp because my co-host is a rock star and reminded me that I have to do the administrative work before we go to play with our friends. And I suck at that. So, Prepper Camp is coming up next September. If you're curious about details, it's www.preppercamp.com. If you can't figure out how to spell prepper and the word camp, we need to have a whole nother conversation. Tickets right now are heavily discounted, and usually that discount holds until about New Year's. So I recommend if you're hearing this now, you better walk your butt right over there. And sorry, Raggle Fraggle, I don't know what your pronouns are. You could be an AI chatbot. So, Zimzer. Anyway. But run over to preppercamp.com, check out information on it, look at the past class schedule. If you're curious, you can actually check out on our YouTube channel. I have an entire playlist set up for all the interviews we shot this past year at Prepper Camp 2023. We did a morning show every morning. We interviewed a lot of guests. We interviewed a couple of showgoers, quite a few other vendors and subject matter experts. It was a really great time. And Andrew and I have been there, 5-6 times, I think?
Sure.
I think you've been there 4 times and I went 5.
Or 5 and 6. I don't remember. I know I skipped a year because of stuff, because of vacation, stuff like that. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a fun time. And Rick and Jane have, and the whole Prepper Camp family has become that. I mean, it's just, we look forward to seeing them every year. I know we got Rick on last year. We need to get Jane on this year. And I say this year, but 2024. But get over there, check it out. There's a lot of cool classes. They have not announced really anything yet just because it's so new, and Rick is organizing everything. But it's the last weekend in September, so the 27th, 28th, and 29th. I know it's a lot of fun. So get your tickets and come hang out.
Yep. And if you're going to go get your tickets now, also consider camping out there with us. If camping is not your thing, they have a couple of small A-frame tiny houses on the property. They have Airbnbs in the neighborhood. I think within a half hour, they have a couple of hotels. There's not a lot of reasons not to consider coming. Just be unaware, it is in Saluda, North Carolina. If that's a haul for you, it's a haul for the two of us too. But, we both think it's worth going. It's definitely worth checking out.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Ben Swanson. So, first thing on the docket, the disarmatards are big mad right now.
They're angry.
Oh, no. They have passed up angry all the way into righteous anger. They are big mad.
Well, their plan is backfiring on them tremendously, and it's hilarious because they're stupid. They're dumb. The whole idea of disarmament and the whole gun buyback program is just laughable.
Yep. So the long and the short of this is somebody found out that in Flint, Michigan, where they had an assault weapon, they did a gun buyback. I guess the thought of the community was that, this was a good thing. This could take guns off the streets. We were going to win a victory for gun violence and protect our communities and blah, 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 blah. However, what actually happened is that the firearms were collected by a private company, and supposedly the only thing that was destroyed was the receivers, and the rest of the parts were all packaged up and resold as parts kits or as singles. Now, for anybody that this sounds a little odd to them, I've listened to a couple of content creators. I've looked into it. Apparently, this is fairly standard process. A lot of FFLs offer a service to destroy a firearm. If you have a firearm you just don't want anymore and you need it legally destroyed, you pay the fee, they'll destroy the firearm. And what a lot of these FFLs do, out of the goodness of their hearts and, pure and simple capitalism is, they will offer to the city and the police department or whatever precinct, whatever entity is doing this gun buyback, we won't charge you for the destruction of the firearms. We'll destroy the receivers. We get to keep what's left. And obviously, because, public entities love getting stuff for free, they bite at this deal. And then what happens is the receiver, let's take an AR-15 for example, the receiver, the lower, the registered part, the actual firearm per the legalities, that is destroyed. And everything else isn't a firearm. So that business takes those parts and resells them. Now, this apparently is extremely standard procedure and has been standard procedure for a very long time. And yet, the disarmatards are big mad. Because those firearms are being broken down and potentially being rebuilt. And of course, some of the articles I've read make this sound like, like you could take the parts that are left and just conjure up another gun in like 5 minutes with no extra parts. Like, they're kind of obfuscating the fact that you need another registered lower. And that is not exactly something you can just like chunk out of a piece of plywood. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a little bit more involved to it than that.
Well, they're mad. I mean, they really don't know anything about firearms as it is. And then they turn around and they have stuff like this, and then they make comments, like the comment that they make about being able to basically rebuild a gun from the parts kits and stuff like that. Like, they're completely false. Like, yeah, you're going online, you're buying a parts kit. Or I'm buying a parts kit or whatever it is. I'm buying a parts kit. I'm buying a trigger assembly. I'm buying whatever it is. I'm buying the parts, and the frame, or the receiver rather, was destroyed. Okay, that's it's legally, that is the legal firearm, is the lower receiver. That gets destroyed. Everything else gets packaged up, and even in this article, the guy from the company even says, he's like, that's how, because like a lot of the times they pair with the city or the police department, whatever, and they don't want to pay them any money to do all this stuff. So they're trying to do it for free, or get out of it for free. The city is and everything. So they're like, well, how do you expect us to make money? We can't just on hopes and dreams and pay our employees and stuff. So this is how they make money, their money back basically from doing all this crap. And so, yeah, I don't know. I really don't blame them at all. And I don't know. It's ridiculous that, it's funny to me because, yeah, the anti-gun crowd is now crying in their boots, and they don't. And that's the thing, is this company, Gunbusters, I think is what it was called. They are not the only company that does this. There's a good handful or so that pair with law enforcement and do all this stuff. So it's going to be really, really interesting, because now who are they going to go with, and who are they going to pair with? I'm personally surprised that it's even making it to the disposal company, because I figured, I mean, if I was on the police department and my department was having a gun buyback program, I'd be swooping in and I'd be freaking buying some guns or taking them or doing whatever. So I don't know.
I don't know. I personally find this hilarious, because like it firmly demonstrates once again that the people that are advocating for these policies do not fundamentally understand what the hell they're asking for. Like they think in their tiny little brain that like there's like an enormous paper shredder right there, and when a gun gets turned in, it goes into the paper shredder and it comes out as dust. And that's not fundamentally how that works. I mean, this harkens back to that you remember, this has happened on social media a couple of times, where somebody will be like, in the name of gun violence, I'm going to destroy this evil AR. And the first thing they do is saw the barrel off, commit a felony.
Yeah, but they commit a felony. We see that, but they're so anti-gun that they're in the group. So they're not going to it's not going to come back on them. But if
True.
I guarantee you, one of us were to do it and post it and say, oh, it's for doing this, this, and this, I guarantee you we'd be having our door knocked on, and
you'd go to prison and I'd go just for knowing you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how that would work out. I know that. But I guess what I'm saying is it's the same kind of thing. It's a fundamental, complete lapse of understanding of the laws surrounding the very thing you are demanding be legislated out of existence. Like, these people just, they don't get it. They don't understand. They're all, right now, I mean, read through that article, they're incensed at this idea that, like, what do you mean legally this one little part is the only thing it's a firearm? And I'm like, those laws have existed for a very, like, since before I was born, maybe before our parents were born. This is not new. This isn't a new thing. This has been this way since I can remember. So this idea that, like, what do you mean it's this way? Well, it's been this way for a long time. You could have Googled it. There was never going to be a situation where somebody volunteered to just torch cut these things into slag for free. That's not how the world works. I kind of feel like this is manufactured outrage. I mean, I think it's hilarious, but there are some people that are very upset about it. To which I reply, good.
In this article, there's a quote from, in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where a taxpayer-funded buyback in May collected 128 firearms that were given to gun busters. Local news stories reported that they would be destroyed at no cost to the city. Police Chief Alonzo Thompson said he was aware that gun busters sold most of the parts rather than crushing everything, but felt that was acceptable as long as the company complied with the ATF regulations. Quote, and he says, quote, but I understand the concerns and those who might feel they're less than informed. He said, adding, my priority is to remove these guns from our community. Yeah, I feel like that's that was the police chief's middle finger to the people who are crying. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I've always known gun buyback programs are a waste of time, waste of taxpayer dollars. And I laughed at this nearly as hard as I laugh at when people, because it says no questions asked. Someone will either print off like a dozen lower receivers and hand them in, or they'll go and they'll make a firearm out of just random crap and turn it in because no questions asked. Here you go. And yeah, that's when the people take advantage of it and actually like make the program look stupid, which it is. Like that's what's funny. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it might have been in Houston, but there was somebody who like they 3D printed like 8 AR-15 lowers and sold them. God, I can't remember what the profit margin was. It was something crazy, something like 15,000% profit.
Oh, yeah,
what it cost them. What it cost them in filament versus what they sold them to the gun buyback for. And the very next day, the gun buyback had amended its rules forever not to accept 3D printed firearms. And then the question was, but these are ghost guns. Should you pay extra for those? It's just, it's hilarious. It is so much fun to watch these people get trolled because their position is nonsensical and it's not hard to show that it's nonsensical. But it is entertaining. It's cheap thrill. Yeah.
But speaking of guns.
So we talked recently about building AR-15s because, you and I have built a couple, and I think it's a process that, like, most people would really benefit from and enjoy indulging in, even if you only ever build one. I do feel like there are certain personalities, like if you're the kind of person that doesn't like to measure stuff, you might not be an AR builder. Or if you're the kind of person that treats all problems as something to be hammered in submission, then working with small forged receivers might not be your thing. However, for the average person that's even remotely mechanically inclined, building an AR-15 is not hard. It's harder to change your oil in some cases on a modern car that is built an AR-15. And there's tons of information out there, despite the best efforts of the disarmament regime. It's not hard. It's easy. It doesn't take a lot of money and tools and everything. But I thought Andrew and I could have a conversation about, like, what kinds of parts do the two of us use, or the two of us recommend, or the two of us prefer. And I think, like, the simplest way to do this is going to be to take an AR-15 from its butt plate to its muzzle and talk through, like, maybe some of the decisions we've made in a couple of builds. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to be clacking away on a keyboard because I'm going to take some notes. And I think what I'm going to do is put this into a blog article on mofpodcast.com. So by the time you're listening to this, give it a couple of days, and I'll probably have this up on the website just in case you want a reference guide. And this is by no means like all inclusive. It's just stuff Andrew and I have personal experience with that I feel like we can recommend. And there will be no banners because I wasn't forward thinking enough to banner every last part of this. But I feel like if the two of us need a list to talk about an AR-15 component-wise intelligently, we have different problems. We're not that inebriated.
Huh.
So stocks. I mean, it's like the most basic bitch AR builder thing. I'm not gonna lie, I like Magpul. It's friggin' cheap. It works. Most of their stuff is fairly well thought out, although I will admit that some of their stocks I think are like they venture slightly into hype beast territory, but like I don't know, I feel like it's a good place to start, and usually it's pretty available. Like Magpul's really good about keeping their products stocked. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Magpul is my go-to. Is usually the go-to for the stocks. I also am a fan of BCM, some of their stocks, just because of, like some of the weight and and that's the thing is some of the way they've made like the cheek rests and some of the risers that are on them and how thick it is. When you're lining up a shot or whatever. Like I don't, I there's pros and cons of both. They're genetic. They're generally the same thing. You can only reinvent the wheel so many times. Um, but I would say, yeah, BCM and I have another one. It's called the minimalist stock, and it's basically just an L.
Oh
I
yeah.
can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's just an L, like basic, and it's very minimalist. It's lightweight. I really like that one. But yeah, Magpul is my go-to.
Yeah, I know exactly the stock you're talking about. I can't think of the manufacturer to save
Yeah,
my life. Somebody, Raggle Fraggle
yeah,
just said MFT.
yeah. It is
Okay.
MFT. It's minimalist.
Yeah, I'll
So
be honest. Like, I'm never gonna argue against a person who's like weight conscious on an AR-15 because you can make a pretty. We both know from experience you can make a freaking heavy AR-15 in a hurry when you
mhm.
start decorating it with stuff. But I will say that, like from my perspective, I don't think I would spend a premium amount of money to save weight on a buttstock only because it's in direct contact with your body and it is at what is almost always the lighter end of the firearm. So it's one of those situations where, yes, if you make it lighter, the whole weapon is lighter, but you also tend to shift the balance point further towards the muzzle, which is the wrong direction, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that if you could save a pound of barrel or a pound of handguard, or you could save a pound of stock, I would save the pound at the heavy end, personally.
Yeah, no, it's
Mission First Tactical. That's what MFT stands for.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, Magpul, you can't go wrong with Magpul. And I do like their new lineup that they have coming out. It seems like it's beefier and it's just well made stuff and at a reasonable price. And that's the thing is like, yeah, I like BCM, but if you think about price, the quality of the product with the price, I'd say just hands down Magpul.
Yeah. So slight detour. Pistol grip, same thing. Magpul, or you
Yeah.
have a.
Yeah, Magpul. They're K2, I believe it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
Magpul K2. I really like the grip angle, the overall feel of it, how thick it is. It just fits in my hand really well. So, and that's what's nice is they do have different angles, grip angles that you can get. But yeah, the K2 is my go-to. I think I have that on all my ARs.
Yeah, I actually have. I don't remember what the other one is called. It's not the K2. I have their other one that is at a more of like an M16A2 angle. It's a little more angled. I've got that on actually this fixed stock AR that's right behind me because that's a M16A2 length stock. So on a longer fixed stock, I find that the more the more extreme pistol grip angle really doesn't bother me. It's actually more comfortable in a lot of ways, especially if you're shooting like off of a rest, off of a barricade, out of the prone, something like that. Like very, very like late 90s, early 2000s when I went through base training, the way we were trained to use M16s, that style of shooting really isn't bothered by by that longer fixed stock and the pistol grip angle. But I will agree with you wholeheartedly that for shorter barrels, for more upright shooting, for more dynamic shooting, the K2 is is so much more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
God Almighty, is so much more comfortable. Just to not have your wrist cranked up into this angle. You know what I'm saying? It feels so much better.
Yeah, and the other thing I do like, Benjamin Swanson, he just pointed it out, that yeah, the K2s. What's nice about the Magpul is, or the K2s, and it's a lot of the Magpul grips, but mostly just the MOE K2s and stuff. They have the storage spot in the bottom, so you can. I've seen people wrap up a spare parts kit, like a spring kit, and tuck in there. They do sell. I mean, on their website they sell a system for like a little bit of lube or something like that, oil, basically, to throw in there. So yeah, I don't know, snacks. I mean, if you want to throw in like
Skittles.
some Skittles, or I don't know, pick your poison, I guess. But
Actually, in the pistol grip, anytime I have storage in the pistol grip, I only keep one thing in there, and that's batteries.
yeah, with my thing, the thing was with that is, and that's what Raggle Fraggle said was flashlight batteries, or it's just spare batteries. You just got to be careful because you don't want them rattling around. So you got to make sure that you maybe wrap them in something like a cloth or something so it
A
takes up
scrap
that
of an
spare
old
space.
T-shirt.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
so that's really the only thing I would recommend is, really just throw it in there. If you put anything in there, wrap it up, because the last thing you want to do is have something rattling around, and then especially if something's going on and you have to be a little bit quieter, then yeah, you don't want something rattling around and making some noise, because the smallest noise at night goes a long ways. So
Yeah.
I guess buffer tube, spring, and buffer weight, might as well just clump those all together.
I don't care personally. Like I
Yeah,
don't have a preference. To me, it's like whatever. I
mil
hate to say
spec.
whatever's cheapest, but whatever is cheapest that seems like it won't snap in half the first time you mortar it into the ground is what I'm content to go with.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is though, is with AR, with the AR-15 platform, it's different with AR-10 because there's not a one spec, uh, with AR-10s and stuff. But like AR-15s, if you get just straight up just if it says like mil spec, I mean that's just to military standards, and it's good. I've never had any issues with anything I've ever gotten that said mil spec next to it. Just a generic spring or buffer, I've never had any issues. However, that being said, the one system I did buy, I bought from Voltor, their A5 buffer system, which is basically it's a spring, their carbine buffer, and their buffer tube, and yeah, it was in that. Yeah, that was it. And I really like it. Their system, it's a little bit more expensive, but from my understanding, from doing research on it when I bought it, and then just my overall thoughts of shooting both side by side, you really don't notice too much with it. But I do notice with the Voltor, I do notice like slight recoil reduction, and also and I did not really even notice. I had never noticed this, but doing research on it, it's called bolt bounce, and basically what that is when you're shooting, the bolt comes back, ejects the round. When it comes forward, if you do slow motion, which it's quick, and that's why you can never see it, but it bounces. So if you have a weaker spring or anything like that, sometimes it'll hit, and then that BC, or the bolt carrier group, will actually hit and kind of come back a little bit, and it'll bounce. And so the videos I've been watching that were side by side, like they're actually getting more shots off faster with the Voltor system versus just a stock mil spec. But at the end of the day, like I said, Never had any issues with mil spec. I've never seen any cause or any issues with the whole bolt bounce. Never seen any issues with that. But that's just Voltor, hands down, like, is my go-to if I want to spend the extra money. But usually just mil spec.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel about having a monkey around with like different weight buffers? Because I don't
I mean, it's
shoot.
needed. It depends on what you're doing.
Well, and that's why I want to bring it up because, like, I've got an 18-inch and a 16-inch, and neither one of them has a suppressor on it. So, like, standard weight buffers work just swimmingly in both of those, especially because, like, this 18-inch rifle has actually got a rifle length gas system, and my 16-inch has a mid length. So, they have fairly long gas systems for the size barrel they have. Thank you, Faxon, for thinking ahead on that. So, like, I haven't been in the position where I've had to screw around with a heavier buffer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is heavier buffer. Uh, it's definitely something that if you're a novice with firearms or if you're a novice with building, really do your research on a buffer. There's a good middle ground that you can definitely just buy one standard buffer and it should be good. But if you are and not trying to get into the gas system yet, but if you are noticing like a hard recoil, if you're noticing maybe short stroking, maybe like it's not necessarily picking up the round right, or if it's not ejecting it right, something like that. Like the two places I always start is the gas system and the buffer. Those are the two places that I will adjust before I really start messing with anything. And usually the buffers, I'll start at the buffer. Either get a lighter buffer so that the bolt will go back a lot easier. It's easier to do a buffer than replace like a whole gas system and deal with the pin and all that stuff. So
Yeah. No, I mean that's a fair point. I guess my whole thought process is like I feel like if you are the person who needs to start screwing around with different buffer weights, you probably know. Like you've colored far enough outside the lines that you probably know you need to be fooling around with different buffer
yeah,
weights. And if your first reaction to hearing that was, "What do you mean different buffer weights?" It probably doesn't apply to you. Like
yeah,
again,
and
again to me, I mean, even when I had like my 10.5 inch AR pistol, that had a that didn't have a pistol length gas system on it. It had a carbine length gas system on
mhm,
it. So like, I feel like until you start suppressing or until you start messing around with really short gas systems, which are opening much more aggressively, much earlier in the cycle, with a lot more gas pressure and a lot more bolt velocity, until you start pushing the AR-15 design past certain parameters, I kind of feel like you don't need to fool around. You just put a buffer in it and it's going to work fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. So
Okay,
uh,
so
but
upper receiver? I mean, I kind of feel like I know what both of us are going to say, but it bears pointing out.
Anderson Manufacturing.
No, well, I mean, that's a perfectly valid choice. I'm not upset
No,
with anybody for building on Anderson.
no. I like to try to keep my upper and lower receivers the same. Um, it's not always going to happen, but I've had good luck with Arrow. Arrow Precision, hands down to me. I've got a couple different. I got some Anderson Manufacturing ones that I have treated me really well. I had one. My first gun that I ever built was an R Guns lower, which I had some issues with their lower. I had to send it back and get it milled a little bit more. It was hanging up, but hands down to me, I didn't. Arrow is the best bang for your buck. When I look at guns, and I know you and I have talked about this quite a bit, is when I build a gun, I usually try to look at. Uh, I mean, I want to put my money in quality parts, and Arrow's a company that their stuff is pretty fairly priced, and it's really well built. Especially if you get the M4E1, it's the enhanced upper and lower, or you can get the M5E1, which is the AR-10 package, which is the
Mm-hmm.
basically. So I would highly recommend and that's why I like to get all of them together. I'll get the rail, the upper receiver and lower receiver, all from the same company, all from Arrow, just because I buy all the M4E1 components and make sure that they all match. So
Yeah, and just small correction on the Aero Precision upper. The M4E1 is their standard upper with M4 M4 feed ramps.
mhm.
The M4E1 Enhanced is the one that you and I have built a couple on, which I always forget to have this queued up, but there's not really a good picture of it. So one of these days I'm just going to have to take
The
mine
barrel
apart
nut.
and do it myself. For any of you who have ever built an AR-15, envision this. The front of an AR-15 receiver, you've got a big threaded portion with outside threads, and then your barrel nut is a big barrel nut with inside threads, and that screws onto it. That's what secures your barrel in place, and that's what your handguard's attached to. That's a very well established design. What the M4E1 Enhanced Upper does is it completely redesigns the front of the upper so that the actual interface that your rail mounts to is milled.
So this is a standard.
That's a standard.
This is a standard, and this is the enhanced.
Yes. So what you're looking at, that big old knob on the end where you would normally have, your threaded portion for your barrel nut to go onto, that is your handguard mounting interface. So the handguard fits onto there, and it's got a fairly long bearing surface, so you're getting a lot of stability just from the mounting interface, and then there's 8 screws that just keep the handguard from coming off the end, basically, is all they're there for.
Right, and this is the barrel nut here. The barrel nut threads into this milled, and this is all milled. What's nice about this, and what I like about it is, to me, it makes it, and the research I've done on this back in the day when they first released these, was it's stronger because it's all milled, it's all one piece. This chunk here and into the upper receiver itself, it's all milled one piece, and then so the barrel nut actually threads inside of it. So that's what makes it a little bit stronger versus this. The barrel nut threads over top of those threads, and so I mean, I've never had any issues with a standard upper either. And I mean, honestly, military wise, this is the style that the military uses, is this right here. And I've never heard of like anything sharing off or anything. I mean, as long as you torque it down to to the correct spec, I've never heard of any issues. It's just that I just really like it just because of the fact of, and I just like it just because of the fact that you can the enhanced one. This is just easier. I like it just because of the handguard. Just sliding the handguard on.
The other part that's really cool is because of the way that whole thing's been redesigned, and your barrel nut doesn't have to support the handguard. It only has to keep the barrel shoved into the front. And think about this. The way that an AR-15 barrel is designed is that the pressure-bearing surface is in the barrel itself. So the things that are containing pressure is the bolt base and the barrel extension. The upper is not under pressure. So all that barrel nut has to do is keep the barrel in the receiver and properly located, and that's it. So the barrel nut is now very, very small relative to what we would think of it traditionally being. And it's so small, as a matter of fact, that the gas, normally with a barrel nut, you got to key it so the gas tube can pass through it. That doesn't that doesn't matter anymore because the gas tube goes above the barrel nut. It simplifies the construction a little bit, even though I don't think it's that hard to properly locate a barrel nut, but it does make it a lot easier and faster to get the barrel installed. I personally think it's a better design. I mean, but it does come with a weight penalty. That's like the only thing. The M4E1 Enhanced Upper is a little heavier. The handguards that you are almost locked into using at that point are proprietary to Aero Precision, and they are also a fair bit heavier than most other handguards on the market. It has downsides, but me personally, I think the strength, and especially because we now have laser aiming modules strapped to the front of our guns, I think that the rail stiffness itself also is a benefit.
Yeah, and then so going off of the upper receiver, the lower receiver, Aero also makes, it's called the M4E1 for the lower receiver. So here's a standard. Basically, this is what a standard. Actually, this is ambidextrous. But basically, this is kind of like the standard lower receiver that a lot of people are familiar with. You don't have like right here. You don't have the trigger guard is open, and really, that's really. And then right here, there's a roll pin right here that you have to tap in. Which we were talking about this before the show. I absolutely hate roll pins. So anything that I can do that makes it just a little bit easier, that is awesome. The big difference with this is actually milled closed now. So it's actually one piece. So and what I like about this too is like a standard mill. I mean, a standard rifle really, or even one you buy off the shelf. A lot of times this is flat right here. And so one of the first modifications I always did was I would actually buy the Magpul enhanced finger. I can't remember the exact name of it, but anyway, basically what it is you buy a Magpul one or just one from a generic one, and you just pop out these pins here, and you can just swap it right out, and it goes from straight across. Actually, I'm on the wrong screen. It goes straight across flat like this, and it makes it more curved like this. And this is mostly for just ease of getting your finger in the trigger well. And if you're wearing gloves, it's good for being able to get gloves in. The nice thing about this is Arrow built this right in, so it's actually built in, and I've never had any issues. The times I've hunted coyote, all that stuff with this lower, with this type of lower, I've never had issues with gloves. That's what I really like about it. The other thing I really like about it is this pin right here is threaded, which is awesome. I don't know why. I wish more companies would do this just off the bat. This pin, you thread it out. You put your bolt carrier catch and everything in. You thread it back in, and it's good to go. I've never had any issues with mine falling out. If you want to throw some thread locker on there, you can. But I've torqued it down just a little bit, and I've never ever had any issues with it walking. So,
have you ever had a lapping upper? Raggle Fraggle's asking.
No.
I mean, not again. I've built 2 ARs, both with Arrow Precision uppers. I've never had an issue with either one of them. They come out of the friggin' box perfect.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And it's also worth pointing out, because we're going to have this exact same discussion about bulk carrier groups here in about 3.5 milliseconds. But like, there's only so many companies making the actual forgings for uppers and lowers.
Right, yeah, there's only a handful. It's only like 4, I think, if I remember right.
So for anybody who's ever asked, what's the difference between a $50 lower and a $250 up lower? Guess what? Sometimes the difference is nothing more than the company logo on the side of it, because they were originally made in the same frickin' factory. That doesn't apply across the board for all of them, but it applies more than you think. So that's why, like, my summation with Arrow Precision has always been, there are 2 plots on this graph. There's price and there's quality. And Arrow Precision is high enough up the quality scale that I know I'm getting a good product, and low enough on the price scale that I'm not like cringing at the idea of whooping the wallet out. So they get my vote most of the time, because it's the delta point between price and quality. And that's not to say that, well, it's good enough. They make really good stuff. It just happens to be made really freaking affordably along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we might as well talk about, before we go backwards, we might as well talk about handguards real fast, because we've kind of already spoiled it by saying that when you use M4E1 enhanced uppers, you're locked into their own proprietary rail. But I mean, if you're not, what's your preference?
Shoot, it's been so long since I've bought anything other than the Arrow. I don't know. Like, honestly, it's cheap, but like I've used some UTG stuff. It's a lot cheaper, but I've never had any issues with the one rifle that I have that has a UTG rail. Never any issues at all. So there's that. But yeah, Arrow. I mean, I haven't bought anything but Arrow in years.
Yeah, and Arrow they do make a couple of handguards that use like the more traditional upper mating arrangement, I can only assume quality wise they're probably on par with the rest of their offerings. They're certainly about the same price wise. Like that's the one downside to using that M4E1 enhanced upper is you're locked into their proprietary upper or hand guards. And if you're like me and that's not really a downside, then it's not a downside. But it is worth pointing out that if you don't like Aero Precision's hand guards that fit that M4E1 enhanced upper, you're going to hate that upper because that's what you're stuck with. And those hand guards, at least the ones that fit the enhanced uppers, they are neither light nor are they slim. It's a very big, beefy hand guard. If you like that, that's cool. I don't mind. But again, it's worth pointing out. Joe Oliveira is asking about PSA quality.
I've honestly like PSA. To my knowledge, in the let's see, I had one upper a long time ago. That was perfect. That was great. I've never owned another PSA rifle. Uh, my experience with the PSA when I bought, so back, I don't know, it's been 10, 15 years or so, I think now, if I remember right. But anyway, that's when I built my first AR, and I used an R guns lower, and I bought a complete upper from PSA. Uh, I was having tons of issues. Ended up contacting PSA and said, "Hey, this is what's going on." The guy was like, "Hey, I'm leaving for SHOT Show here shortly. Get it to me, and I'll try to work on it before I go." So I got it to him. He sent it back to me before he left. Like he sent me a whole letter of like what he handwritten he did because he just didn't have time to do a bunch of stuff. But basically, he ended up sending me a brand new upper receiver just to make sure it wasn't the upper receiver. And he said that they fired multiple, like 4 mags through it, no issues. This, and this. Did a bunch of stuff. Here's a brand new upper receiver, and it turned out to be the lower was the issue. However, so that being said, I've never had any bad issues with PSA, and their customer service is top notch. So that's my big thing with PSA. And PSA, they're getting bigger. Uh, and I hope, and I've seen their prices increase, and I hope that they kind of keep things down, because they are pretty quality for what the price is. I just hope that they don't do what BCM did. Basically, back in the day, BCM was really good, but as soon as their name got popular, their prices went right up. So I hope PSA doesn't do that. But if you're looking at a PSA rifle, by all means, I would say pick it up. Honestly, like I bought one of their AKs, and it runs smooth. It runs flawless. Like I've never had any issues with their AK platform. And their Jackal actually looks pretty interesting to me as well. But yeah, no, PSA. I'd say try them out.
I mean, I think what I would say about PSA based on firsthand experience from a couple friends of mine's firearms I've handled is it's the same thing about Aero Precision. It's the price versus the quality. I personally, based on, my experience and a sample size of not much, my experiences tells me that if I have to pick Aero Precision parts or PSA like uppers, lowers, and everything, I think Aero Precision's better quality. That's just what I've experienced. But it's going to cost you a few bucks more. So it always comes down to that question of like, how much hell do you intend to put this weapon through, and what's it worth to you to make sure it lasts forever?
Mm-hmm.
But for the person who says I have $600 for an AR, and that is leaving money for like training and mags and ammo and all the other stuff you really should have, I would say go get that $600 AR and go start getting some training in, rather than tell the person, nope, go spend $2,000 on an AR-15 and be broke. Because I know a lot of people who have very cheap rifles but know how to run them very well.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
So what, barrel now?
I actually don't want to go any further forward. While I was letting you talk, I was writing notes. I was trying to get ahead of this. Trigger.
Oh,
I know
okay.
you're a Geisley guy.
I mean, well, honestly, I mean, in my air platform, in my short air platform, I have a 2.5 pound single stage POF. It's a POF trigger, and it's flat faced. I love it. It's single stage, quick reset. That the flat trigger, I really like the way the flat trigger feels versus the curve. It's the only flat trigger I own, versus, I mean, except for what's on my pistols and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, in my AR-10, I have a two-stage Geisley, and then I think in my other AR, I have an ALG, which is, I mean, basically a Geisley trigger.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, yeah, POF and Geisley, and then actually in my other AR, I have a CNC, CNC machine, drop-in trigger system.
Yeah, and me personally, I will second you on the ALG triggers, the ACT specifically. Like the price difference between any remotely decent mil-spec trigger and an ALG ACT is so minuscule. It's worth getting the ACT. Like it is that little bit smoother. It's a little bit less creepy, not a lot less creepy. I mean, it's a mil-spec trigger that's been polished up and slicked up with some coatings. It's call it what it is. But I feel like it's a small enough extra amount of money to justify the upgrades that are being made. And
I
that's
mean,
usually go ahead.
I mean, it's like $79, I think, for the ALG trigger. But that's the thing, is for anybody who doesn't know, ALG is a sister company to Geisley.
Yeah.
Bill Geisley, his wife owns ALG, is the owner of ALG.
And her name is Amy Lynn Geisley. Figure
Yeah,
out where ALG
and
came from.
yeah, and so so ALG is basically a tuned up mil spec Geisley trigger. I don't know. For the price of it, for the price, you can't beat it. If you're trying to build something and you're looking at quality, triggers are super easy to swap out and upgrade. If you're looking for if you don't really want to go just straight mil spec, ALG, drop in ALG in there. You'll be fine. You'll love it. If you want to upgrade to maybe a flat face trigger down the road or something with a lighter pull or whatever, then do it down the road. But ALG is hands down like one of the best triggers that I'll always get if I need to put something other than like a drop in or something else in.
Yeah. I also recently changed out this 18-inch SPR's trigger for a Trigger Tech, and that's
Hmm.
been interesting. Like, I haven't been able to get out to the range yet. I'm actually going to lock myself at my reloading bench tomorrow and get this ladder load for 77 grain Match Kings spun up so that I can get this rifle out to the range and do some load development on that finally. But my initial impressions of this Trigger Tech, you can get them single stage, dual stage. You can get them like this one is their AR duty trigger, which has two fixed pull weights you select from. You can get a curved trigger or a flat face trigger. This one's curved because flat face triggers feel just super freaking weird to me for some reason. Probably because I spent my entire life on curved triggers and I cannot get over the emotional hump of what it feels like. Raggle Fraggle, I hear you about I'm assuming you're probably talking about the diamond triggers that are, or no, the competition trigger I think is fixed 2.5 pound. The diamond triggers are adjustable from 4.5 down to 1.5 pounds. I have mixed feelings about the trigger so far. Just dry firing it, like it's it is exactly what they say it is. It is a zero creep trigger, and for anybody that's never felt a zero creep trigger, it's weird feeling, like in a good way, because there's no creep to it. As soon as the trigger moves, it's sending the hammer forward. There's a bit of over travel, oddly enough. Like if you pull the trigger and you hold that trigger to the rear and then you cycle the bolt, after the bolt has cycled the hammer reset, that's when the trigger moves. So it's kind of a weird feeling. And the reset is super, super, super mushy, which I'm not crazy about. For a DMR or an SPR, I don't think it's a problem. But for a firearm that I was going to be shooting with gloves or something I was going to be like shooting on the move, I would absolutely not accept this week of a reset. Honestly, though, I my 16-inch carbine still has an ALG ACT in it because I don't really care to have a super crisp, nice trigger in that thing. The ALG ACT does what I need it to do. It's a mil-spec trigger. It's drop safe. And the other thing I found out recently, our Mantis Blackbeards are not compatible with Trigger Tech triggers.
That sucks.
It's something weird that it's something weird they found out when these triggers started hitting the market, and I haven't looked into it enough to know why it is. But apparently it has something to do with the hammer reset, and if you put a Mantis Blackbeard into an AR upper with a Trigger Tech trigger in the lower, it'll just full auto. Like, it never gets the hammer down far enough to reset the trigger, to catch the sear. So it just pop, 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 pop,
Must
pop,
just
pop.
be placement or something like that.
It's got to be something like that. But it's weird because I've just sat there and like run the bolt by hand, and it catches no problem. So it's got to be something in the fact that it's got to be something in the way this cartridge is designed, and the interface and the difference between that and mil spec. I don't know. It's worth pointing out. It's not a huge detraction for me, but
yeah,
it is worth pointing out.
So, bolt carrier group.
Toolcraft.
Yeah.
Next.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Well, it's the same thing as, here's the thing though, even if we say Aero Precision make bolt carrier groups. Aero Precision's bolt carrier groups are fine. They're nice. They work. They're good quality. But it's the same thing we said about, yes, Fraggle, full auto, but if we're talking about a Mantis X Blackbeard, so, you're not going to shoot full auto with live ammo. Unless you just want to, scare the bejesus out of somebody when they hear the hammer rocking and rolling while you're dry fire practicing. But what I was saying was, like, it's the same thing as the uppers and the lowers. There's only so many companies making the forgings. Well, guess what? There's only so many companies that make bolt carrier groups, and Toolcraft happens to be one of them. So a lot, I don't know exactly who, but a lot of the bolt carrier groups you find on the market from Aero Precision, among others, are made by Toolcraft.
So, yeah, Toolcraft, just like there's a handful of companies that make upper and lower receivers. But, well, and by make I mean like they actually they do the forging or casting, whatever you want to call it. And then they ship out that blank out, and then other companies will actually finish them out and mill them out and stuff like that. I mean, Aero, Toolcraft makes, and there's a handful or so of bolt carrier group manufacturers. Toolcraft is, in my opinion, one of the top. I love my Toolcraft bolts. Never had any issues. You pull them out and they clean up really, really nice, clean up fast. The carbon really doesn't stick to them too bad. So yeah, hands down, Toolcraft.
Okay, so one question and one side note. The side note, at least the last time I checked, Toolcraft has an option for 2 different steels in the bolts themselves. I think there's C158 or Carpenter steel, which is technically what the military specs, and they have another option out there. I can't remember what it is. It's another alloy steel. I personally have always gone with the C158 bolts. I don't remember there being a huge cost difference, if any. How do you feel about their various coating options? Like, I've got a pair of nickel boron carriers that are in my rifles, and then I've got one black nitrided that's just sitting in the safe in case I need to hot swap a bolt and keep going.
I mean, I have both. I have a black nitride and I have a nickel, and the only difference really is visibility. Like my night vision rifle, I have the black nitride in it, just to kind of take down that shine a little bit more, and then in my 308 I have the nickel, and they run great. They run flawless. They clean up both great. Carbon doesn't stick to the coatings. It's great. So
yeah, but if you're that worried about the bolt carrier group being shiny, I mean, put a magazine through it. It won't be shiny for much longer.
Yeah, well, with a suppressor, it won't be shiny for.
Oh no! As soon as you screw the suppressor on, the whole gun's going to get dirty as hell immediately.
Yeah. So barrels,
Faxon.
Yeah, ballistic advantage or Faxon. I've got both, and they both run great. And for the price, you can't beat. To me, for the price, you can't beat them for the quality. Yeah. So
now my dad has a ballistic advantage barrel, and I have Faxon barrels in both of mine. And having shot both, I wouldn't say that there is an enormous accuracy advantage with ballistic advantage. I don't know if you've experienced anything
Mhm.
different. I wouldn't call either one like a precision barrel. You know, they're good barrels for what they are, but they both make good rack grade barrels, so to say.
Mhm.
You know, like if you're chasing like super crazy sub MOA accuracy, I don't know that I'd recommend you go to either one of those. But if what you're
Well, if
looking
you're
for is something you're going to run and gun, something that's going to get the job done, something that's not going to break your bank, and it's going to last a good long while, Faxon's really hard to beat.
Yeah, but the thing is though, is if you're shooting for sub MOA, you're going to be doing a lot more research. Your barrel's going to cost a lot more, and you might be shooting a bolt action versus an AR. But which I
Yeah.
mean, ARs can do it, but I'm just saying like you're just going to invest more money into certain things. I'm thinking just quality and just something that will put lead down range, and then you can take it for training, and it'll put a good group together. So.
On the side of the Faxon gunner barrel, or do you play with any of their others?
I have their government profile barrel. I also have. I was looking at their pencil barrel, just because of weight.
I've got
But
one.
the gunner, I believe I believe one is a. I can't remember if it was ballistic advantage or Faxon, but I do have a government style barrel, and then a profile, and the other one is a gunner, if I remember right, and those are pretty heavy. They don't take a lot out. And that's where like my air pistol is heavier because of the profile barrel that's on it. If I went lighter, then yeah, definitely would lighten it up. But the thing is, though, the downside is if you have a lighter barrel, like a pencil barrel, and you're shooting more rounds, that barrel does heat up a little bit faster. But which could affect accuracy, stuff like that. If you're worried about that. That's
Yeah.
what's nice about the like the government style and stuff or the government and everything is, in my opinion, it you can put more rounds through it without it heating up as fast.
Yeah, I mean, at least in Faxon's catalog, I wouldn't look at any. I personally wouldn't look at any of their other profiles other than the gunner or the pencil, because like the additional weight between like a SOCOM barrel and the gunner barrel, the weight
Mhm.
savings is enough, and the additional stiffness is negligible. And then if you're looking for just as light as possible, just get a pencil barrel and deal
Mhm.
with the downsides.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
muzzle
So,
muzzle devices. I'm simple. Everything I have has A2 bird cages. When I had a 10.5 inch pistol, I had a 3.5 inch cat can on it, which was purely just to try to get all the blast to go forward down range so that it didn't like light my eardrums on fire. And it worked for that fairly well, but I haven't played with some of the stuff you have.
um, yeah. As far as barrel devices, I have AAC is my one suppressor, and so of course I have the AEC flash hider or muzzle comp, on my 308 6.5 Creedmoor. Did have it on my 5.56, but then I just picked up a Surefire SOCOM 5.56 suppressor, so now I have a Surefire War Comp on it. So that is um, so that's my muzzle devices. Now that I have a dedicated 5.56. I'll probably put that same muzzle device on the rest of my ARs that are in 5.56. The 308 AAC, it runs really great. And of course, I mean, if you don't run a suppressor, I mean, you could always direct thread. Then you won't have a muzzle device at all. But I mean, that's to each their own, really. Whatever you want to do, and that's the thing is, with the A5 with the A2 bird cage, there is what is that? What I say a couple weeks ago, was it Griffin Armament?
Griffith
Uh,
armament, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
or
They make
Griffin, yeah.
a yeah Griffin Armament. They make a suppressor that is like, I mean, that's the thing is I'm surprised more companies aren't doing this too. Is you have the A2 the bird cage, which is one of the most, if well, it's the most popular comp out there, flash hider out there, and I mean it does a great job. It's a great for. I mean, you can buy them online for like $10 or some crap like that, like super cheap. They're a great device. Uh, they came out with a suppressor that will actually mount to the A2 birdcage. So you don't have to frickin', like, because I mean, that's the thing is like the Surefire, my can was $800, I think it was, grand, $1,000 with the tax stamp or the permission slip, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And then the War Comp was, I think I found it on sale for, I think it retails for like 160. I found it on sale for I think 130, 140 ish.
Oh.
And I bought another one from a friend of mine that he took his off when he swapped us a suppressor around. And I bought it from him for like $80 or something like that, which was a good deal. The AECs were I think $90 a piece. So yeah, I mean that's the thing is so you really and I guess if we really want to really quickly talk about it is pin versus or pin and weld versus not. And that I guess that depends on what your use is. I stayed away from pin and welding, and that's why none of my guns are 13.7 or 14.5 inch and pin and welded, is because I didn't at the time. I didn't know what muzzle device I wanted. Now that I have a Surefire SOCOM and like I'm sticking with that muzzle device, I've been looking at buying, instead of the 16-inch barrel, I'm looking at buying like a 13.7 or something, and then pin and weld my muzzle device on and call it good. And then it'll be 16 inches. And then with the suppressor, actually, it'll be more like 20. But, you know, whatever. So anyway, that's about it.
Yeah. So I had magazines and optics on here. I feel like mags we could do fairly quickly, but optics might need to shave off and be its own episode because I feel like we could talk about that for like 45 minutes. And we're
Yeah.
at an hour.
Yeah. I mean, optics, definitely. I guess it all depends on what you want to do and purpose and stuff like that. But yeah, we can do it a different time.
What about mags though? I've got a couple that are in my rotation, but like I'm not really super hung up on magazines.
Magazines, I've always just used Magpul. I've never had any issues with Magpul. I got friends. I know people who swear by Lancer magazines, which they're great. Like the steel feed lips that Lancer has on theirs. That there's something to say the steel feed lips versus the polymer longevity of the magazine for one, and then just you can definitely beat it up a lot more. But yeah, Magpul, and then I don't even know how many I have, but I have this just some standard GI metal mags too, which are great. I've never had any issues. The downside about which Magpul has fixed it, but Magpul mags when they first came out with 300 Blackout, you could not load a full magazine of 300 Blackout in a Magpul magazine.
Mm.
The way something with a taper, something with like the angle and some stuff like that, like the 300 Blackout rounds would not. Eventually they would just bind up. You couldn't do anything, so you could only get like a half a mag if that in. Versus that's why I bought a bunch of steel mags, just because like the GI mags, like I could load a full 30-round mag of 300 Blackout with that. So that was my difference between 300 Blackout and 5.56. Because you definitely want to keep those two separated.
Yeah. So I don't have an aversion to Magpul magazines. I have a mix of just GI mags. Although I do have a good stack that are I forget what brand they are off the top of my head. It's a stainless steel bodied copy of a GI mag. So I mean a couple ounces heavier, but it's very thin stainless steel versus aluminum. So call that a little bit of a durability spike. And I've got a fair number of Lancers. I
Mm.
like Lancers. I don't know that I like them better than Magpul, but I've got a bunch of them and I've never had a problem with them. And we are talking specifically about ARs, but I mean, I've got a fair number of. I've got a. I've kind of used a lot of different kinds of magazines, and I'm less concerned about what brand of magazine you use than I am about the fact that the stupid thing runs properly, and the first time it acts crazy, you either identify and fix the problem or you smash the thing with a hammer and throw it in the trash can. Like, but personally, like Magpul's hard to go wrong with, Lancer's hard to go wrong with, GI mags work. So just Get a bunch of them. Don't ever buy just one magazine and think you're good. I have a very dear friend that actually hit me up just yesterday to go to the range with him sometime in the near future, and he's gonna have to come on the show one time because I got to razz the hell out of him, because like when he first started buying guns, he was buying lots of guns and not lots of magazines, and I raked his ass over the coals pretty hard about it. Like, in the most loving, I want you to be able to protect your life and your family way humanly possible, I raked him over the coals pretty hard. Like, I'm glad that you got like 12 guns, but like you've got like 13 magazines between all of them. Like, you're gonna run out of loaded mags real fast, bub. And then he asked me how many loaded mags I have, and I reaffirmed for him why I'm on so many government watch lists. But, I mean, I guess we could probably cap it off right there. Like I said, I had kind of thought we might get into, like, you know, optics and that whole thing, but now that I'm looking at the time, I mean, hell, just talking about scopes, red dots, like lasers, just talking about those and AR platforms, we could be here for another half an hour easy.
Oh, wrap it up.
Yep. So once again, Prepper Camp is coming up in the near future. For the patrons, y'all should be seeing Secret Santa gifts in the near future. We did a little thing. Thank you, Stuart, for arranging that. And if anybody doesn't like what you got, you will have your Secret Santa's return address so you could take appropriate action if necessary. But Prepper Camp's coming up. Matter of fact, Camp and Trip is coming up next summer. Again, patron only. And, I mean, we're getting into the holiday time, everybody. So, like, please take a little bit of time away from YouTube and this goofy podcast and whatever other nonsense you're into. Spend some time with your family. Put your feet up and freaking chill. Oh, Jesus Christ, Raggle Fraggle. Bipods, lights, forward grips. Yes, we could be here for another hour talking about all that stuff. I'm just going to put a note about AR accessories, and we'll be here for an hour. But, Andrew, I know what we're going to talk about next time. Yeah, rub your temples. I feel you.
Okay.
But, Matter of Fact's podcast heading out the door. Good night, everybody.
Bye.